New year, same us.
Nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed. Throwback to our last three-body
We did
video.
the same thing. Crazy.
Crazy. New
We'll
year.
start every year with it.
New year, same us.
Yeah, literally exact same content. Hello! Welcome back to Crows Before Bros. I'm Randy.
I'm Lauren.
And this is our silly, quirky, not like other book channel that is exactly like other book channels.
true.
We sit in my living room and we talk about books. Christmas is over and I'm lazy. Don't come for me.
Hey, Serbian Christmas just happened.
That's true.
Sretan Božić, baby!
This month we read The Dark Forest by Cixin Liu. So this is a sequel to a book that we read last year, The Three-Body Problem. We had a lot of really good feedback on that video and we both really liked three bodies. So we're like, hey, let's do.
I became a sci-fi girly upon reading the first one.
Yeah. A note, guys, that because this is a sequel, there will be spoilers for Three Body for sure. I do want to address a couple people commented on our last video being like, wow, this is like so silly, and like I would have thought that this wasn't a serious book at all. And look, guys, it's not that serious. It's obviously a very serious thing, but there's so many silly concepts in this book that it's hard to talk about them without addressing how absolutely bonkers some of these concepts are.
Taking into account as well that you and I are just like
Silly people.
very silly. If you're here for a really serious analysis of this book,
We're just two girls.
so small.
Plot. I will give spoiler-free plot to start. Let me read. The Dark Forest by Cixin Liu is 512 pages and it is sci-fi, which is so much for our wee small girl brains. We're women. We're girl bossing.
Girls in STEM. Stupid. Terrible.
Three-body problem ends with the trisolarans kind of infecting the earth with these sophons that essentially put a level of a halt to any scientific progression, because this means that the trisolarans, you know, light years and light years and light years away, can know everything that's happening on Earth. They kind of pretty much a bunch of spies
everywhere.
Yeah. The United Nations, they come up with a plan to create this wall facer project where essentially they take four people. Four guys. Four guys. That's actually not true. Three of them are pretty like renowned guys and one just guy. And they give them all of the resources and money and anything they could need to secretly come up with a plan that could potentially wipe out this alien race who's coming to Earth.
Specifically in their minds, because the moment that they speak their plans out loud or write them down or anything, they become like subject to being surveilled. Is that a word?
The idea is that these wall facers have to keep their ulterior plans a secret from everyone. Like I couldn't be like, psst, 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 Lauren, here's my plan, because a little tiny sophon between us would be like, hey, Trisolaris, this is Randy's plan, and it would ruin everything.
It's like the little, when the genie's the bee.
Let's talk characters.
Sure.
I feel like there's really three main characters to talk about. Our first is Luoji. He is essentially like a washed up professor. Like he doesn't really have a lot going on for him.
And he's kind of like a ladies' man at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, he's kind of sleazy and scummy. And he is kind of breaking up with his current fling, and then she gets hit by a car.
That's wild. I had this moment where I was like, is this the plot of Verity? You know, at the beginning where the head explodes?
Yeah.
I was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, anyway, his lady friend's head explodes. No, that's Verity. His lady friend ceases.
She's kaput.
And then he kind of gets picked up by a bunch of security personnel. He's worried that he is being falsely accused for this crime. He eventually is our fourth guy, our wall breaker guy. The government is like, hey, I think that the Trisolarans were actually trying to kill you instead of your lady friend. So obviously you have something viable. Here's money and power now. Have fun with it.
Save humanity.
Save humanity. Yeah. And he goes, okay, first thing I need.
Relatable character, frankly.
Honestly, he's like, I have a vision in my mind of a house by a lake in the mountains. Find me that house. I want to live there.
Don't tell me where it is.
Don't tell me where it is.
I don't want to know.
No.
It's none of my business where it is. And they're like, are you sure this is part of the project? And he's like, it's part of the project.
Absolutely part of the project. Next, find me my dream wife. It's part of the plan. He's like, buy me this 200-year-old wine found in the bottom of a shipwreck. It's part of the plan.
That's the kind of power you want. Faced with that responsibility though, for absolute sure I would have been like, oh, you're gonna give me all of the UN's money?
Yeah. I need
to do whatever I need.
The Beauty and the Beast library in order to complete my task.
I need to meet Henry Cavill.
That's critical to the plan.
Critical to the plan.
So that's pretty much Luoji for now. Sidebar, my husband really likes these novels. Whenever we talk about this one, I always call Luoji Luigi.
Luigi's Mansion!
Our second character is Shi Chang, or Dashi. It's Dashi from the first book. He's back, baby, and I'm so happy because...
What did you say in the last video? He's the only useful character?
The only useful character in this whole goddamn book, Dashi, who's a beat cop.
People didn't like that.
No, people really didn't like that. Dashi comes back. He is wonderful. Still wonderful. Still so grumpy. He essentially comes on as Luigi. He comes on as Luigi's bodyguard, baby. If Luigi is Luigi, Dashi is Wario.
If Wario smoked like a pack a day.
Bold of you to assume Wario doesn't. Our final real main character throughout the book is Fei Hai Zhang. He is a scientist, and for the first 50% of this book, I'm like, there's a guy and he's doing science. Really, his main thing for the first chunk of the book is as all the scientists gather around to decide how to deal with the trisolarian issue, he's really promoting high cost, high reward. We gotta use big tech, we gotta spend the money. This is a advanced civilization and we need to advance our technology to be able to stand up against them.
Yeah.
And everyone else is like, that sounds expensive. No, he is very convinced that he is right, and he eventually will take actions, but not until way later in the book.
I think it's worth noting maybe the other wall facers.
Oh, yes.
Our main Luoji is just the guy.
He's just a guy.
We have Bill Hines.
Yeah.
We have Ray Diaz. And we have
Tyler Frederick.
And then eventually we meet their wall breakers as well, which are people who come forth to basically be like, I've been thinking, and I think I know what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
We see other sort of side characters in the wife that is appointed really to Luoji.
Yeah.
And their child eventually, and whichever else. But other than that, that's pretty much our character
and I
set.
Feel like even those characters exist to give us more insight to the main characters. They don't really exist in and of themselves.
Are we ready to spoil everybody's world?
So if this sounds interesting to you, and probably if you've read Three Body, because it gives a lot of context for what's happening here, I definitely recommend this one. It is great fun. It's a wild ride.
I would also suggest, if you have not read Three Body, but you're possibly interested in seeing the new Netflix series that's coming out, give the books a chance.
Yeah, they're great fun.
Great. Slower paced, flowery, but really fun.
Yeah.
Really, really fun.
Spoiler City, baby!
So our first wall breaker that breaks one of our wall facers is Tyler Frederick's wall breaker. Tyler Frederick's plan was to send out the Mosquito fleet with the people hibernated, but to equip the ships with the ability to become more like drones. So it's like sending these people out to fight, but also have control of their ships so that ultimately they're just sacrificial, kamikaze little rockets. It's an ethical quandary of is this fair to the people who have volunteered?
This is a running theme through the first chunk of the book. While humanity's trying to figure it out, they're like, okay, well, we'll send a bunch of people just out into space, escapists, they can just find things. And then everybody's like, well, how do we pick? If we truly as a society believe that everybody is equal, then how do you choose who gets to go on and be humanity? I found that it was interesting that Tyler Frederick's plot kind of mirrored that right from the beginning.
What is too much of a sacrifice when it stands for saving all of humanity?
Yeah.
So he was the first one. Wallbreaker kind of brought him down.
Yeah.
And then he just was like, deuces, I'm out of here.
My obviously very chilling scene where he goes to Luoji and he's like, I got pretty much.
And you're the only person
who understands. They have this conversation. What I hate the most is the expression people have when they look at me. A crowd of people surrounded me in the square, their eyes revealing the fantasies of children, the reverence of the middle aged, and the concern of the elderly. Other eyes said, look, he's a wall facer. He's at work, but he's the only one in the world who knows what he's doing. See what a great job he's doing? He's pretending so well. How will the enemy know what his real strategy is? That great, great, great strategy that only he knows, and that will be the salvation of the world. Complete and utter crap, those idiots. And then Luoji is like, is this part of your plan?
He's like, oh, you're feeling alone, and this whole situation is very bleak, and that nobody understands you.
Do you remember that TikTok trend that was like, let me out? Let me out! This is not a dance! And then everyone just starts chanting it back to him. Like, that's what that scene read like.
Literally.
Where it was like heart-wrenching, but literally immediately my brain went, let me out.
It's not long after that Tyler takes his life,
it's
right?
like at the end of that conversation.
I can't. So that happens. We see Tyler take his life.
Yeah.
First wall facer's down.
Yeah.
Then Ray Diaz is our second wall facer. And his plan was more or less to load up Mercury with a whole bunch of atomic bombs.
Yeah.
Basically, the kickback would essentially suck Mercury into the sun.
Yeah.
Following Mercury, the power that had created would also like suck up Earth.
Yeah.
Like
so
everything else.
It was essentially like if I can't have Earth, no one can plan, right? And it was like, we'll stop the Trisolarians from taking over Earth at our own extinction.
And so obviously then it's like a crime against humanity.
Yeah.
And so once his wall breaker comes in and tells him, hey, I know your plan. I know your plan is to just wipe out like everybody.
Yeah.
Ray Diaz is like, you're right. And he goes back to his home.
Okay, before he does that, he does the most unhinged thing where he's like at the UN. He's at the UN and the UN is like, hey, that's a crime against humanity. We're gonna arrest you. And then he's like, what are you arresting me for? And he's like, I don't know. We don't have a law for it yet, but we'll make a law and then we'll arrest you for it. He's like, look at this watch. This watch is linked to my heart rate.
He has an Apple Watch.
He has an Apple Watch.
He's like a spy kid.
He's like, if my heart rate goes weird in any direction, Mercury will just blow up anyways.
He's like, don't stress me out.
Don't stress me out.
You can't kill me, but also don't make me even like a little bit anxious or I
will die.
Will die.
He tells everybody this and they're like, damn, bro, like whatever, just leave. And then he goes back to his home country, but by this point the news is broken that he was like super down to just sacrifice all of humanity.
So he's bludgeoned to death.
Yeah, he's literally stoned. It's brutal.
But also kind of funny.
Yeah. The tonal shift in that moment, I was like, oh my.
Yeah. What took me, I think, on the wildest ride in terms of the wall facer's plans and also what I carried with me for the rest of the book as almost like a fourth wall break, kind of like, what is happening here? Trying to anticipate like who's affected and who's not was actually Bill Hines' plan. So him and his wife, they more or less hatch a plan to alter the brain chemistry in a way where you just like fiercely believe in
you like can't not believe the thing that you've been programmed to believe.
So the sort of example set is that water is toxic. They convince somebody, they do something to his brain that like makes him think unequivocally so that water is toxic.
Yeah,
he
it will kill you.
It will kill him. And so they take this then as a moment in the book to be like, Earth's morale is bad.
Yeah.
How are we going to beat Trisolaris if
we don't think
we don't think that we will?
Yeah.
And so like, how can we manipulate mankind's consciousness in a way that's like long lasting into the future and like we think we can win? There's all of these people who are basically signing up to go and get faith in this project, and some of them bring requests for faith in other things, which I thought was quite funny.
Yeah.
A little paper, please tell me my wife is faithful. Please convince me that my dick is really actually quite large. So all these people are getting faith. So then for the remainder of the book, you're like, who genuinely believes that we can beat Trisolaris?
Yeah.
And who has been altered to believe that we can beat Trisolaris? It begs the question of like, is it ethical if they're volunteering, but they're still being like mind controlled, more or less? Like, it's not totally free will,
but
right?
it's not.
That leads into the first like big the second big twist, because I think the first big twist actually is when they capture Luoji's wife and child.
Oh yeah.
And they were literally in on it.
Yeah, they knew.
For 5 years.
Yeah.
Like,
the wife is essentially a mental creation. Like, Luoji wrote this fictional woman who he then was like, oh, I love this fictional woman. She's the best.
Was Luoji not like already with someone?
Yeah, he like literally left her because he was like, I love my fictional bae more.
Yeah.
And then so he meets Dashi. He's part of the Wall Facer project. He's like, Dashi, let me describe my dream woman to you.
And Dashi's like, yeah, sure, let me draw her. He's doodling.
Dashi is like, yeah, I can find her. He just like goes out into the world. But yeah, the big twist is that she's like kind of in on it the whole time, and she's like, put me in hibernation, I'll see you at doomsday. I was just here to motivate you more than anything.
To motivate you for 5 years and to have a child with you. Like it's commitment to the role.
Yeah.
And I guess we should mention that Luoji sends a spell.
He casts a spell on like a star. I keep forgetting that that's part of it because so that happens, and then he's like, deuces, I'm gonna go hibernate. When something happens, wake me up. Everybody's like, obviously nothing's gonna you can't
just cast a spell on space.
Yeah.
He's like, it's gonna work. And because it's gonna work, I've picked a planet really far away.
Yeah.
Like so far away, you should not see any effects of it for another like 50 years.
Yeah, so I'm taking a nap.
I'm taking a nap. See you later.
Yeah.
We get to the second half of the book, which is the time jump.
Actually,
5 years.
there's one other thing that happens before the time jump. Beihai, this man who's been boring as hell, just doing science, suddenly he's on a little geological journey to collect rocks.
If you want to save the planet, then you gotta understand it. Know your geodes from your granite, now it's talk rock.
And then he carves down those rocks made out of like meteors into bullets, rides up into space, and then kills a bunch of people in the middle of taking a group photo.
It's really funny.
All these higher ups in the science world go to space to be like, look, we're rich and important people and we're in space. So they're all like,
he does these meteorite bullets into them, which is honestly kind of brilliant.
Yeah, because it just looked like a meteorite shower. Yeah.
Some of the people who were still okay were like, oh, meteor shower, everybody run. Except they're in space.
Yeah.
So
everybody float.
If I were having my photo taken,
that's the time.
Setting, that's the time to die. We don't like it.
Much like Luoji, Beihai goes, sick, I did what I came here to do. I'm going in hibernation for 200 years.
Which launches us really into the second half of the book.
Yeah.
The Dark Forest portion of the book. As I always have these kinds of questions when we're reading books of this nature. Let's say you're in this setting.
Yeah.
Would you want to hibernate to however many years in the future to see how humanity has moved on, I guess?
I don't know. I'm not very good at like big picture thinking. It'd be tempting. I would be like, hibernate me until like the recession's over or something. Like, can we go to a good era? I don't want to be in crisis era anymore.
Yeah.
I think I would struggle a lot with the decision and I don't really have an answer. What about you?
I think I'd be curious enough to do it, particularly in the case where Luoji, before he gets hibernated, blood is pouring out of his orifices.
That's true.
And they're like, oh, you're ill. We're gonna just freeze you until we know what to do about it.
That is true. Like, I do appreciate that part of hibernation where it's like, Dashi had like leukemia and then he like rolls out and he's like, I'm cured. Bill Hines by the end has spent like 200 years working on this plan.
Twist 2 is when
Bill Hines meets his wall breaker.
And it's his wife.
It's his wife.
Yeah.
I literally gagged. I was like, oh my god.
That was the moment where I slammed the book shut and I was like, what?
You want to think that the person you're married to like knows you so deeply and so intricately that when the person then uses that like against you, it's like
the betrayal of a century.
It's the betrayal of 2 centuries.
2 centuries.
Right.
Did you suspect it at all?
No,
me neither.
No,
craziness.
I like that Bill Hines used his little brainwash device on himself to believe that no matter what, like his plan will work. I have a note in my Kobo that's like, inside me are 2 wolves because he's like, my plan is going to work and I can see why you think it's not going to work.
Reasonably so, but when he finds out that his wife is this wall breaker, he's a shell of a man for the rest of the book.
Yeah, kind of at this point, the world like loses faith in the idea of the wall facer project.
The part of the book where I was just absolutely the most like mesmerized is when Luoji first wakes up. We're getting this new setting, this society that is beneath the crust
underground,
the earth, I guess, but there's sky, simulated sky and everything, and every surface in buildings has like display screens.
I found that like, overwhelming.
What is happening? I don't know. I was like, this is
it's like everybody lives essentially in like a leaf on like these underground trees that are like structures that hold up the earth.
It is totally wild.
He doesn't hang around there for too long though. They were right. The Trisolarans were specifically trying to kill him, and conveniently everything there is linked to like technology, which Trisolarans can like manipulate.
So they more or less had like a virus happening in that down underground world, and so then there's like 6 or 7 attempts or something on Luoji's leg down, including a sofa going like like
the sofa that tries to eat him.
So he was like, I can't be here anymore. So then they're like, that's okay, you can go up to the surface. And he's like, what? So he's on the crust of the earth. And then a lot of stuff happens.
So much stuff happens
in so many different areas. That I found this part of the book the hardest part to keep up with. It was fascinating, but I was like, where are we?
Ate up this chunk of the book. There's the droplet thread, there's the Beihai thread, there's the Luigi Dark Forest thread.
Well, let's maybe start with the thread of people that is escaping.
One thing about this new future is there's essentially like a space civilization. It's its own country. It's essentially the big country that makes all the decisions, and everyone on Earth is just like vibing there. Beihai and his like kind of own fleet, he like takes over the fleet somehow and like launches them way far away into space, in the middle of freaking nowhere. And Earth is like, hey, where are you? Come back. He's actually like a deep-seated escapist who thinks that people have to escape Earth in order for humanity to survive. But then yeah, they're like, crap, we won't have enough fuel, enough resources to get, there's 5 ships, to get all 5 fleets where we need to go.
Just to clear out my brain, are these 5 ships connected in any way? Or are they just traveling in a
They're traveling in formation, yeah.
But they're not actually touching one another.
No, I don't think so.
But Beihai has control of all of them.
Yeah.
They make a decision at this point in time.
They don't actually necessarily make the decision. Everybody's like, wow, Beihai, like there's some other stuff going on that we'll get to, but they're like, Beihai, you saved humanity. We needed some people to escape, right? They're trying to figure out how to be a civilization that exists way far away from Earth, no longer any connection. How are we going to survive? They decide, okay, first things first, we have to go to this gassy planet to get some fuel. But they kind of realize that like it will take, I think it's like 600,000 years or something to hit that planet.
It's because they hadn't considered the drag, right?
All the leaders are in a room and they kind of have this realization of like all 5 of our ships are not going to make it. If we use fuel, 1 of our ships can make it. And then it felt like that scene in The Office where they're like, you know, Beihai already knew this and had already like decided to sacrifice himself, and he starts the chain.
One of the ships had put themselves into that gooey state. That's the one that survived, right? He had put them into that mode where like literally the whole body of the ship just fills up with goo.
That's
how I imagine.
A normal thing. Like it's like a Jello fight.
Yeah, like I'm imagining the goo like going into your lungs.
They got
like,
slime.
Whatever. They literally were slimed.
Wow. That's kind of what's happening there, and I think it really reflects something that's going to come to light with another thing later. A lot of this ending stuff mirrored other parts of the books really, really beautifully. I would say the next big thing is this droplet.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This part of the book was crazy.
I literally was like not breathing. I was like, this is insane. So on Earth, everybody's like, we're partying it up. We got Trisolaris.
And this is the part of the book where I was like, are they all impacted?
Have they all been brainwashed?
Have they all been brainwashed into thinking like they have a chance? Because their society has launched technologically a little bit, but it's manipulating things that they could have manipulated hundreds of years ago. They receive what they perceive to be a gift of peace.
So essentially Trisolaris has sent a probe out, and there's like 9 other probes like a couple years away, but there's one probe approaching like the solar system now, and then 9 other probes, and then like way far behind is like the actual Trisolaris.
Did you perceive how big this probe was?
I perceived it as not massive.
I was imagining, what's that city in the States that has the big
Chicago,
silver,
the beam?
Yeah, maybe smaller.
Yeah.
But like that vibe.
Yeah. And it's like perfectly reflective. It's so smooth.
And shaped like a raindrop.
It's shaped like a little raindrop. Everybody's like, wow. At first everybody's like, maybe this is like made to self-destruct, right? Like that would be a problem. They want us to take it. And then everybody's kind of like, oh, it's so pretty. It's so nice. This is obviously a gift. It's like the Virgin Mary's tear.
I can genuinely super relate to just being given something shiny though, and being like, this is so
nice. So then it gives us this big long chunk where it's like, you know, this little droplet, it like starts radiating halos of light and it starts doing all these things, and it goes on about all these beautiful things this thing is doing, and then it's like, but the people on the ship didn't notice that because they were incinerated after the first thing of light. You're like, what? The little thing, it's like, and it like zips out. On Earth, everybody's like, we're sending a lot of ships to go deal with one little probe. We got this. As if the Sophons didn't wreck their entire life for hundreds of years and they're literally the size of atoms, but whatever. All the ships in formation, the big ships that Earth have sent, are in like a bunch of lines.
Yeah, I think of like a shish kebab. When you line down shish kebab meat on a cutting board as an example. Yeah. And then you stab it through it.
So this little droplet literally just like zips down the line through the heart of all these ships.
And because it's zipping so fast,
immediately incinerates. Like
so hot.
Yeah.
I believe they actually used the phrase something about what it feels like to be penetrated by a red hot, and I was like, what book am I reading? Whoa. I was reading like this.
Yeah. I think I've read a a lot of books that had like action that I was like, this action was like a paragraph, you know? And this was like pages on pages of just like destruction and like so well written. I curled up and it's like, time for some nice reading. And like immediately I was like, oh, look at this cute little droplet they got. But I was like pretty immediately like, oh no.
Skeptical. Humanity's obviously grasping at the idea of peace, but I feel like right away I would have been like, this is a sus metal droplet.
I mean, 1 minute ago you said
like
a shiny thing. Then the droplet flies up to the sun and essentially puts a halt on using the sun as like an amplifier to send out messages, which is like a carryover fact from Three Body. Then we go back to Luigi every time. We go back to Luigi, not Mario's brother. He is like,
he's just plumbing.
He's like, hey, by the way, what happened with that spell I cast? And they're like, oh yeah, that star that you cast a spell on exploded like 50 years ago, but we saw it a year ago.
Yeah, so all of a sudden he's a messiah. They're like, oh my gosh, wizard.
Yeah,
Gandalf is
how did you do this? He has a bunch of realizations in conjunction with each other. So he has a realization that as long as two people are opposing each other, they will always be suspicious of each other. Even if we agree on peace, or I think you're benevolent, you might think that I think you're benevolent, but maybe like you don't know, right? And so it's this never-ending spiral of like somewhere deep down there will be suspicion, and suspicion will lead to drastic measures. In conjunction, he realizes that because of this, if there's anyone else in the universe that knows where you are, they're going to try to come knock you out. There's always the suspicion that if they don't
potentially be malicious.
Like Luigi takes this and he goes, Trilogy.
First, okay, I think it's worth it to say that first, Luigi, he's like, well, I'm a famous guy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to a graveyard of some other famous guys, and I'm just gonna dig my own grave. Which I was like,
so dramatic.
Have you ever, seriously, relatable. I was like, have you ever done something so embarrassing that you're just like, I'm just gonna literally dig my own literal grave
literally will just die.
And he's leaning up against his gravestone, and that's when he's like,
Trilogy. He's like, so I know you're on your way to me. I don't know exactly where you are, and you're on your way to me, and you only know kind of where I am. But here's the thing. If I start blowing up suns, not every living thing in the universe is gonna go check that out. But someone will. So I'm just gonna start blowing up suns to let the whole universe know what your location is. And they will come for you. Someone will come for you.
It's a bold move.
It's a bold move.
It's bold. And especially because he mirrored the Ray Diaz thing.
Yeah.
And he was like, I will blow up these suns.
I thought it was
with my Apple Watch.
Yeah, he's like, I'll out you. I'm gonna out you to the whole universe. And they're like, don't do that. They're like, okay.
What are your demands? And you're like, wow, all of a sudden like, you have humanity.
But yeah, so he like lays out his demands. He's like, peace out, don't come for us. Stop taking this amplifier away from us. Get gone. And they're like, okay. And he's like, oh wait, also share all of your technology with us. And they're like, okay. And that's kind of where the book ends, is he's like with his wife and his daughter.
It's like a 5 year later shoot into the future, which doesn't feel that severe after being launched 200 years into the future.
Sofan is like asking him if this is love.
Yeah, I actually had this thing where I was like, you know what? This book gets a pass on, you know, in ACOTAR, Amarantha and her riddle.
Oh, yes.
Is like, the answer to the riddle is love.
The idea of the Trisolarans, like struggling with the idea of humanity, is like a theme throughout the book. You see right at the beginning when they're like, what is deceit? What is like all these other human concepts that we see as like negative? What is truth? Like, if I can't lie, I can't have truth. Like, they go through this, and then at the end they're like, wait, is this love? Is this something that I as an alien species am like capable of? And it's like actually hits much harder than most books do when they're like, and the answer is love.
No, I thought it was
good.
It was cool. I was like, you know what? For once, this trope lands.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the book. That's the middle book of the series.
I really liked it. I think I liked it a little more than Three Body, and maybe that might just be because it's less sciencey, because it really like can't be quite as science heavy. I was like so invested right away with the idea of the wall facer and the wall breakers. The droplet thing like literally had me on the edge of my seat.
I know.
I do think Beihai was super boring until he started literally shooting people. It took literal murder for him to be an interesting character. There are points in the book that are slow
for sure
and like hard to get through, but I thought overall I can forgive those parts.
Similarly to how I felt when I read Three Body, and probably to a higher degree in this one, just because of like how mentally at capacity I am lately with just being like very, very busy. I think like my brain really struggled to keep up with this book. Yeah. But it was very cool. Yeah. There were a lot of times in this work where I'm like, am I smart enough for this book? Yeah. Like, holy moly. Or like, did I understand that properly? I think I get it, but it was just like, it was a hard read. So I found myself kind of simultaneously being like, this is a really hard way to start my reading for the year. Yeah. And also being like, but if I start my reading like this for the year, then I can read anything. But gosh, it's beautiful. Yeah. Like the writing is so stunning, and like every concept explored, I was like, that's so interesting. Yeah. Even like the smaller little pieces of world building.
When I think of like my reading goals for this year, it's like I want to make space for books like this that are challenging in some ways or make me stop and think. I think it is important for me to find books like this that challenge me in my reading and my thoughts and all that. So I really appreciated that part.
In challenging your real life worldview, do you think that if you were in this situation, you would be more inclined to stay and fight for the earth, or would you be an escapist?
I think I know myself well enough to think that I'd be an escapist. Yeah, I'm an escapist in all other areas. I'm a reader, baby.
I think probably same. Generally, when I have a harder time getting through a book, I won't give it a high star rating. Yeah. Because I'm like, this was like
taxing.
Was every and like maybe taxing's not the right word, but like, was I enjoying 100% of my time reading it? No, because that's more of a comment on my brain than it is on the book. Yeah. And I did give it like a high star rating as well. I was teetering between like a 4 and a 5, and I think like my star rating would probably be a 4 to make room for that
brain,
that bit of like, okay, this was really, it was like hard for me. Like, and I want to read the third one because I was like, everything that happened was really cool. Yeah. Like,
well, and a 4 is still like a high rating. I gave it like a 4.25 also in our a great work of art category. What song did you pick?
I picked a Muse song again, like I did last time, but I feel inclined to say that like generally speaking, I don't super agree with like the views of this band. Anyway, the song that I chose is Compliance by Muse, and I think it is just the right vibe because Muse is a sci-fi band. But also it's like, compliance, we just need your compliance. You will feel no pain anymore, no defiance. We just need your compliance. We won't let you feel lost anymore. No more self-reliance. When I chose it, I was thinking a little bit about the mind control kind of component, but also the compliance of like Luoji especially being a wall facer. They're like, yeah, you can choose not to be a wall facer, but you can't. The whole vibe of that song I think fits in with this book, but like I do feel it important to state that like the context of this song, I think, and the context of this whole album was very much like, reject your government in the wake of COVID and stuff, and it's like,
not the vibe. I chose Decode by Paramore.
Are you
from the Twilight album? Every song on Twilight, outrageously good. Great banger albums. How can I decide what's right when you're clouding up my mind? I can't win your losing fight all the time. The truth is hiding in your eyes. It's hanging on your tongue, just boiling in my blood. You think that I can't see my thoughts you can't decode.
That's really good. Yeah. That's a good choice. Yeah. In terms of like a kind of a jokey song, and just one that was in my mind the whole entire time in the question of like, do we leave Earth? Do we stay on Earth? Was should I stay or should I go now?
What else are you reading right now?
I just started Leviathan Wakes. Okay. And
sci-fi era.
I'm in my sci-fi era. Well, I'm watching Firefly again. Matt and I are finally watching it together. I want to read Before the Coffee Gets Cold because it's a nice short little very different vibe. Yeah. And then I've kind of been in the middle of The Will of the Many by James Islandson as well. What about you?
Right now I'm reading romantic comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld, and I have Scythe by Neil Shusterman out. I'm reading The Wind-Up Bird Chronicles, and I'm also reading Atomic Habits. So I'm a little all over the place right now.
You're at max capacity.
And I also started playing Baldur's Gate. So
finally, that new year, new reading stuff.
We'll keep on keeping on. Something we should know, actually. Both Lauren and I.
Oh my gosh, we should probably tell people about this. Hey, shoot.
Another fun thing happening for us is that we are both part of a love story anthology. So we both have submissions in Sweet Bitter Love. It comes out on Valentine's Day. We'll put a link to pre-order it in the bio. And yeah.
You're an author.
You're an author.
We're authors.
Baby.
We hope to keep reading. We hope to keep writing and having a blast with
being silly.
The world of literary stuff.
Yeah. Literary stuff.
Very, very...
Read our books. We're authors. Anyways, guys, we'll see you next time. Thank you for sticking around for another year with us.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, etc. Bye. Bye. Little drink break. That's why they call soup soup, because when you drink it, you go, like you make little soup sounds.
This is an ASMR channel now. We're gonna transition.
We just eat soup.
Books. We just eat soup now.